Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders, and great millstone who will well. Peace and mercy to the Tazadak Akim out there that's laboring this truth with all sincerity. I'm the brother Thamayim, back at it again with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. All right, and today's topic, is pretty much going into how the Lord, delivers the righteous out of, trials and tribulations. Okay, it's going to be a quick lesson, all right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. So I'm going to start off with the book of Matthew. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 11. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you, and persecute you. Now, when you go into a revile, all right, it means to degrade, debase. It says insult, taunt, to scorn. Okay, so these, the scriptures say what? Blessed, I'm gonna read it again. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you. So, blessed are those, all right, when men shall revile you, meaning when men mock at you, scorn at you, all right, in modern terms, more like, they call you conspiracy theorists, all right, they call you a bummalite, okay, they say, they just make up things to come at you, all right. That's why the scriptures say in Proverbs, the first chapter, how long you simple ones shall love simplicity, and a scorner's delight in their scorning. Because there was always people that was scorning at the prophets, at the men of the Lord. Because this is who Yahweh Shah is speaking to. The believers, all right, the men of the Lord, the prophets, the teachers, all right, those who had faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah, and in those times, those who had faith in Yahweh Shah, okay? So, blessed are we supposed to be, mocked at, scorned at, looked down upon, okay? That's supposed to happen. We're not supposed to take no offense to it. All right, because the Lord already gave us that warning that men was gonna, scorn, mock at us, taunt us. All right, say that the Lord is not dealing with us. Just like especially in the times of 34th Street when the apostles was out there. Brothers that was out there. We had a lot of people scorning at, the prophets, spitting at them, cursing at them. Even if you tell somebody that you're a Hebrew Israelite, they like, the people that just curse up the white man, so-called the white man, huh? Those guys, man, they don't got the Lord not with them, man. So that's why the scriptures say, I'm going to read it again, Matthew 5 and 11, blessed are ye when men shall revile you. All right, so, we're going to be blessed, That's a good thing, okay? Because the scriptures say that the servant's not greater than his master. So, Yahweh Shah was mocked, scorned at, That's why the scriptures say a prophet is not honored in his own city. They was doing that to Yahweh Shah, man. Laughing at him, mocking at him, Or isn't this Joseph's son, the carpenter? So, hey, man, it's a beautiful thing that people do this. It shows you that who the Lord is, dealing with. So it says, and persecute you. Now let's go into the word persecute. Okay. Persecute. It means to oppress for the holding of an opinion or adherence to a particular creed or mode of worship, to torment. All right, to proceed against, start illegal action. So now it's going to come to a time when they're going to label us as terrorists. All right, because all the things that we preach and prophesy about, we prophesying about what? The downfall of America. All right, Babylon the Great. We prophesying there's going to be the end of this kingdom, this rulership. We're prophesying future current events, World War III with Russia. All right, mainly, you're going to have other nations shooting their missiles at America, but mainly Russia. We're prophesying pretty much the downfall of this wicked kingdom, okay? And, we're preaching righteousness. So you're going to have people come up against us, man. All right? You know, you're going to have the government come up against us. You're going to have your own people that you may be cool with, you know, calling, you know, the cops on you, you know, telling them where you live, you know. You're going to have people turning against you. Okay? Think about it, man. You know, they was about to kill, you know, Peter denied the Lord, you know, because they was about to kill him for, you know, they was on him. You know, the people was on him. Saying, hey, wasn't you just with Yahweh Shah? Wasn't you just with him? And that's when, you know, Peter denied him. You know? Showing you that people are going to come. There's nothing new under the sun. There's people going to come against you, man. All right? So the same things that happened in ancient biblical times is going to happen, you know, in the near future, man. You know, you're going to have your own family members turn against you. Okay? But, you know, we always supposed to rejoice in it because, you know, that shows right there that we're doing the right thing, that we know, potentially we could be men of the Lord. All right? So it says, and shall say all men of evil against you falsely for my sake. So it could be all types of, you know, evil things that is going to come against us, and they're going to, you know, basically bear false witness against us as well, lie upon us. Okay, they could say anything, man. A person could say, you know, especially in the times of Jacob's trouble, all right, to the police that, hey, we just killed somebody, or that was the guy who just robbed somebody, or oh, those the guys who be teaching on the corner saying that America is gonna be destroyed. Yeah, that's the guy right there. Now you know, now you're locked up, thrown in a concentration camp. You know, now you're going through your trials. All right, or you may be on a run. There's so much things that could happen, pretty much. Okay, and in those times, you had men that was getting, you know, persecuted for that, man. You had men that were martyrs. All right, you had bishops in these churches that was being martyrs for, you know, for being a believer of Yahweh Shah. All right, so it's the same thing that's going to happen. So it says, verse 12, rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Right, so we're supposed to rejoice and be exceedingly glad, you know, instead of being, you know, sad about it. We should just be happy because it proves that what? The end is near, and it proves that we potentially could be the men of the Lord, man. Okay, so you're supposed to be happy. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to take these things cheerfully, like the scriptures say. You know, and endure. So it says, for great is your reward in heaven. You know, what's that reward? Being, you know, the elect, being the first fruits of the kingdom of heaven, which is going to be here on earth, being delivered. Even if you're a martyr, you're still going to be delivered, man. You know, receiving that crown, you know, and you're going to be a part of, you know, you're going to be a joint heir of Yahweh Shah, man. That's the reward. Okay. So it says, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. All right. And, you know, the prophet I wanted to bring out, you know, was Jeremiah. Okay. You know, they persecuted the prophets that was before us. You know, you had the disciples who were actually persecuted, who actually were martyrs, you know, for believing, you know, for staying in the faith, for not turning their back against the Lord. Okay. Remaining faithful. All right. And I just wanted to bring out a point how, you know, Jeremiah, you know, the prophet Jeremiah, he was, you know, tormented and persecuted. Okay. So this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 38, verse 7. It reads, matter of fact, I'm gonna start from verse 5. All right, I'm gonna read it in AMP. It says, then King Zedekiah, the fearing princes, said, listen, is he in your hand? For the king is in no position to do anything against you. So they took Jeremiah and threw him into the cistern of Malchijah, the king's son, which was in the court of the guard house, and they let Jeremiah down into the cistern with ropes. Now there was no water in the cistern, but only mud, and Jeremiah sank in the mud. So I'm gonna give you a picture of how the cistern looked, because that was one of the punishments they was doing in ancient times. So this is a little story, a little like outline of how it looked. Okay, pretty much when you get thrown in a cistern, pretty much they leaving you to die. Okay, so Jeremiah, he was thrown in it's in the King James it say a dungeon, but when you go into it, it's a cistern. All right, but pretty much, that's a gruesome way to die, because you end up sinking through the water, through the mud, suffocating. It's like drowning, pretty much. All right. So it says, and this is, I'm gonna read it. This says, now, Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian Cushite, one of the eunuchs who was in the king's palace, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the cistern, and while the king was sitting in the gate of Benjamin, Ebed-Melech went out of the king's palace and spoke to the king, saying, my lord, the king, these men have acted wickedly in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have thrown into the cistern, and he will die of hunger where he is, because of the famine, for there is no more bread in the city. All right. So it says, and it says, all these people, they acted wickedly against Jeremiah. Same thing that's going to happen in the near future. They're going to act wickedly towards the prophets, the men of the Lord. All right. So it says, then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, take 30 men from here with you and lift Jeremiah the prophet out of the cistern before he dies. All right, showing you that the Lord delivered Jeremiah. Okay, because Jeremiah pleased the Lord. Okay, he was doing the work of the Lord, and the Lord delivered him out of the cistern. Okay, and that's that should be something that should boost your faith when you read these scriptures. That's why the scriptures say, blessed is he that readeth, man. Through these scriptures, it gives us the stability for wisdom, knowledge, and for the wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of our times, man. That's why we read these scriptures. We read about, how Jeremiah was delivered from the cistern. We read about how Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego was delivered out of the furnace of fire. Okay, we read these different scriptures because in the near future, it's going to happen to the believers, to the men of the Lord. Even some of you sisters, man. Okay? So I want to get one more precept, the book of Psalms, chapter 34. Let me see. Yep. Verse 19, it says, Psalm chapter 34, verse 19, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. All right. So the Lord was going to deliver you out of our afflictions, man. All right. And especially in the times of Jacob's trouble, just like how he delivered Jeremiah out of the cistern. All right. Just like how he delivered Daniel out the lion's den. Okay. But you got to make the Lord your foundation, your rock. You got to know the names of the Lord. You got to pray to those names. You got to have faith. You got to be a doer and not a hearer only. Okay? You got to endure. You got to keep the integrity. You got to hold fast to your crown, and the Lord's going to deliver you out of all, your afflictions, man. And the Lord knows what you can handle at the end of the day. Because everyone not going to be a martyr. All right? But if let's say you were in that concentration camp, and you ain't eat for a couple days. All right, you got to remember, the scriptures when Habakkuk, delivered Daniel some food, man. All right, so you got to always keep the scriptures in your mind, man, daily. All right, because these scriptures help boost our faith, man. All right, and Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, he comes in the volume of the book. Okay, so with that, Lord is edifying. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh Shem Shah. And with that, Shalom.